Friends, groundbreaking new findings have emerged, totally altering the understanding and working of the carnivore diet. Recent clinical analyses, including insights from renowned practitioners and top influencers, combined with robust studies from leading institutions like Harvard and Oxford, have uncovered 3 decisive factors, which profoundly influence the effectiveness and healing capabilities of the carnivore diet.
The implications of these findings are really substantial. In rigorously controlled cohorts, participants who carefully managed these 3 key variables have experienced some unprecedented results. This includes the mean HbA1c reductions of 1.8 percentage points, triglyceride decreases exceeding 40%, and remission rates of autoimmune disorders as high as 52%. Conversely, individuals neglecting these critical elements, despite adhering strictly to a meat-based diet, encountered stagnant weight loss, minimal metabolic improvement, and some other adverse outcomes. So, what precisely are these 3 newly identified factors driving such significant differences in outcomes of the carnivore diet? Why are they so fundamental to unlocking the true therapeutic potential of this eating approach? And most critically, once these elements are precisely configured, what are the 10 unbelievable results manifested soon afterwards?
Well, in today's video, we are going to answer all these questions with extreme clarity, precision, and robust scientific evidence. Let's dive in and leverage these findings to fully optimize our health on the carnivore journey.
Recent groundbreaking research has revealed some stunning insights into the working and efficacy of the carnivore diet. This research doesn't merely suggest that the carnivore diet is viable. Rather, it demonstrates that when properly implemented, it can be highly transformative for human health, addressing numerous chronic conditions that have become epidemic in our modern world. However, the important point here is that not all carnivore diets are equal in terms of results and performance. The difference between modest results and extraordinary transformation lies in the optimization of 3 critical pillars that form the foundation of a successful carnivore approach. These pillars, identified through both cutting-edge research and the clinical experience of leading health practitioners, represent the key factors that determine our success on this revolutionary dietary approach. According to the experts, mastering these 3 elements turbocharges our results, fueling our muscle growth, accelerating fat loss, boosting healing, and balancing out the hormone levels.
In the sections ahead, we're going to explore each of these pillars in detail, uncovering what the science says about why it matters to us and how to implement them for our maximal benefit. So, let's begin the exploration. Starting off with the first pillar, fat to protein ratio, the very foundation of carnivore success.
While most of us are simply unaware of this critical fact, the cornerstone of an optimized carnivore diet lies in understanding and implementing the correct fat-to-protein ratio. This critical balance determines not only our body's metabolic state, but also our energy levels, weight management success, and overall health outcomes. Recent research has revealed that this ratio may be the single most influential factor in determining whether someone thrives or merely survives on a carnivore approach. To appreciate why this ratio carries such importance, it's essential to understand the body's metabolic priorities in a carbohydrate-deprived environment. When carbohydrate intake is minimized, as it is on a strict carnivore protocol, the body shifts its energy metabolism away from glucose and begins relying primarily on fatty acids and ketones for fuel. This metabolic flexibility is one of humanity's most remarkable adaptations and is a key reason why early humans thrived even during periods of food scarcity. Dr. Kiltz explains that the human body is metabolically wired to function optimally on a high-fat, moderate protein intake, particularly in the absence of consistent carbohydrate availability. Historically, our ancestors did not consume constant meals of grains or fruits. Instead, they thrived on the fatty meat of hunted animals and relied on stored body fat during periods between successful hunts. In this context, dietary protein serves primarily a structural role. supporting muscle repair, enzyme function, and hormone production, while fat becomes the body's dominant fuel source. However, problems arise when protein intake begins to outweigh fat consumption significantly. When this happens, the body resorts to a process called gluconeogenesis, in which excess amino acids from protein are converted into glucose by the liver. While gluconeogenesis is a natural and necessary metabolic function, an over-reliance on it, particularly in the absence of dietary fat, can interfere with the state of ketosis and trigger insulin secretion. This disrupts the metabolic harmony that the carnivore diet is designed to achieve. People who consume predominantly lean meats without sufficient fat often experience fatigue, brain fog, irritability, persistent hunger, or difficulty maintaining weight loss. These are classic signs of an imbalanced fat-to-protein intake, not a failure of the diet itself. To determine what constitutes the right balance, it's helpful to consider the macronutrient configurations observed to yield the best results. Individuals seeking weight loss, metabolic healing, or improved neurological function typically do best when around 70 to 80% of their total calories come from fat, with the remaining 20 to 30% derived from protein. This high-fat, moderate protein approach often translates into consuming approximately 1.5 to 2 grams of fat for every 1 gram of protein by weight. This ratio encourages deep ketosis, which stabilizes blood sugar, reduces systemic inflammation, enhances cognitive clarity, and promotes rapid fat adaptation. By contrast, individuals focused on athletic performance, strength training, or building lean muscle would benefit from a slightly different approach. In such cases, a moderate fat, higher protein configuration, with around 60 to 70% of calories from fat and 30 to 40% from protein, may be more appropriate. This pattern still supports fat adaptation, but provides the additional amino acids needed for tissue repair and hypertrophy. It often reflects a ratio closer to 1 gram of fat for every gram of protein by weight. Since fat contains over twice the calories of protein, 9 calories per gram compared to 4, these ratios by weight and by caloric percentage are not directly interchangeable. Yet both are crucial considerations when crafting a tailored meal plan. Experts like Dr. Ken Berry frequently observe that many people new to the carnivore diet make the mistake of eating too lean. They gravitate toward cuts like chicken breast, egg whites, or lean sirloin, and then wonder why they feel drained, moody, or constantly hungry. Almost invariably, the solution is to increase dietary fat, either by choosing fattier cuts or by cooking with butter, tallow, or rendered animal fat.
So, what does the research tell us about the fat-to-protein configuration? Let's find out.
New research has provided some compelling evidence for the importance of appropriate fat-to-protein ratios. A 2024 study published in the journal Nutrients analyzed the nutrient composition of carnivore diets and found that most successful implementations featured 60 to 80% of calories from fat and 20 to 40% from protein. The researchers noted that this ratio closely mimics the macronutrient composition of human breast milk, suggesting an evolutionary basis for these proportions. Another study examining the metabolic effects of varying protein intake on a ketogenic diet found that higher protein intakes, above 30% of calories, significantly reduced ketone production in most participants, potentially diminishing some of the therapeutic benefits associated with nutritional ketosis. Clinical data from practitioners specializing in carnivore and ketogenic approaches consistently shows that patients achieve better outcomes when consuming adequate fat relative to protein. Dr. Kiltz, a reproductive endocrinologist who advocates for carnivore nutrition, reports that his patients experience improved hormonal balance, reduced inflammation, and enhanced fertility when following a high-fat carnivore approach. It is understandable that ideal ratios are not universal. Several individual factors influence where a person might fall within this spectrum. Activity level plays a significant role. Those who engage in intense physical activity, such as athletes or weightlifters, often require a higher protein intake to support muscle recovery and tissue repair. Conversely, those with more sedentary lifestyles can thrive on a higher fat intake without the same protein demands. Age is another important consideration. As individuals age, their protein requirements often increase due to the natural decline in muscle mass known as sarcopenia. Older adults may benefit from slightly higher protein intake to preserve functional strength and mobility. Metabolic health is perhaps the most influential variable. Those with insulin resistance, type 2 diabetes, or metabolic syndrome often see the fastest improvements when they start with a higher fat ratio, as this helps reduce insulin secretion, stabilizes energy, and accelerates metabolic recovery. The clarity of goals also helps define our optimal range. If the primary objective is fat loss or autoimmune healing, leaning toward a higher fat percentage often yields better results due to improved satiety and hormonal regulation. However, if the focus is on building muscle or improving strength, shifting towards slightly higher protein intake while maintaining adequate fat is likely more beneficial. Implementing these ratios in daily eating begins with understanding the natural fat and protein profiles of animal-based foods. Some cuts of meat, such as ribeye, lamb shoulder, and fatty ground beef, naturally contain high fat content and require little adjustment. Fatty fish like salmon and mackerel, along with foods like egg yolks, pork belly, and bacon, also contribute significantly to fat intake. Whole eggs and organ meats, such as liver and heart, tend to offer a more balanced fat-to-protein ratio depending on preparation. On the leaner end of the spectrum are foods like chicken breast, turkey, venison, lean fish, and bison. These can still be incorporated, but they must be paired with added fats to maintain the right metabolic balance. To shift the ratio toward higher fat intake, one can make small but meaningful adjustments. Choosing well-marbled cuts instead of lean ones, cooking in butter or tallow, and incorporating fat-dense elements like bone marrow or animal brain can all help raise fat intake without complicating meals. Many practitioners recommend simply adding a tablespoon of tallow or butter to lean ground beef or eggs. Dr. Anthony Chaffee often advises patients experiencing low energy or hunger on carnivore to try this one adjustment, adding fat, and notes that it frequently resolves the issue quickly. Ultimately, fat is our body's most efficient and stable fuel source in the absence of carbohydrates. It provides us with the long-burning energy that supports our mental clarity, hormonal balance, and metabolic repair. Protein, on the other hand, is essential for growth, maintenance, immune function, and detoxification, but it is not meant to serve as our primary energy source. When the two are consumed in the right proportion, the body operates with remarkable precision. Energy becomes stable, cravings diminish, body fat is mobilized, and tissues regenerate at a cellular level. The fat-to-protein ratio, thus, is not just a minor tweak, rather, it is the starting point for unlocking the immense therapeutic potential of the carnivore diet.
Now, before we move ahead to even more crucial sections in our analysis, we would like to know, which diet plan are you following, keto or carnivore? And what ratio you think suits you better? And how has been your experience so far? Do share your journey in the comments. And do us a small favor here. Subscribe to our channel Carnivore Squad, helping us spread this vital info further. Next up, we have pillar number 2, Electrolyte Balance. The hidden key to adaptation.
Well, if the fat-to-protein ratio forms the metabolic architecture of the carnivore diet, then electrolyte balance is the invisible force that determines how effectively that structure holds. It is the second core pillar of an optimized carnivore lifestyle, and often the most neglected one. While many newcomers carefully calculate their macronutrients and food choices, they frequently overlook the vital role of minerals, particularly sodium, potassium, magnesium, and calcium. This oversight is one of the most common reasons people experience difficulty during their transition into carnivore. Symptoms such as headaches, fatigue, dizziness, cramps, brain fog, and insomnia are not inherent to the diet itself. They are often signs of electrolyte imbalance caused by a dramatic metabolic shift that most of us do not anticipate. The moment we eliminate carbohydrates, the body undergoes a rapid and powerful hormonal transformation. Chief among these is the reduction in insulin levels. On a standard carbohydrate-based diet, insulin remains elevated, which prompts the kidneys to retain sodium. However, once insulin falls, as it inevitably does on a carnivore or ketogenic approach, the kidneys begin excreting sodium at a much faster rate. This sodium loss, if not matched by increased dietary intake, sets off a chain reaction. Fluid is lost from the bloodstream, potassium balance is disrupted, magnesium stores are strained, and the delicate equilibrium of intra- and extracellular fluid is compromised. What follows is a constellation of symptoms popularly referred to as the keto flu. Though in truth, it is not flu at all, it is a correctable physiological response to depleted electrolytes. Dr. Stephen Phinney, one of the foremost authorities on low-carbohydrate physiology, has shown that sodium requirements can increase by 3 to 5 grams per day in low-carb states. This isn't a mild adjustment, it is a fundamental reorientation of electrolyte physiology, and failing to meet this new baseline can impair everything from energy metabolism to cognitive clarity. Dr. Ken Berry regularly stresses this point in clinical consultations. Most individuals experiencing difficulty with carnivore adaptation are not undernourished in calories or macronutrients, they are undersalted. Dr. Baker echoes this sentiment, frequently observing that replenishing sodium alone often resolves 80 to 90% of complaints during the adaptation phase. Sodium is the primary regulator of extracellular fluid balance. It governs blood pressure, nerve transmission, and muscular contractions, including those of the heart. When sodium is lost, blood volume drops, leading to orthostatic dizziness, weakness, nausea, and what many perceive as a crash. But this is not a flaw of the diet, it is the body requesting support. Potassium works synergistically with sodium, particularly in regulating the function of nerve cells and muscle tissue. Without adequate potassium, symptoms such as palpitations, muscle spasms, and constipation frequently appear. Magnesium, a cofactor in over 300 enzymatic processes, becomes especially important in this transition. It helps regulate sleep cycles, smooth muscle relaxation, insulin signaling, and neuromuscular stability. A shortage in magnesium often manifests as twitching, restlessness, poor sleep, irritability, or persistent cramping, often at night. Calcium, though less frequently discussed in carnivore circles, also plays a vital role. Beyond its structural purpose in bones and teeth, calcium helps initiate muscle contractions, regulate nerve activity, and assist in blood clotting. In the absence of dairy, calcium needs must be met through bone-in meats like sardines or salmon, through bone broth, or through strategic supplementation. While the carnivore diet does supply calcium from animal tissues, levels may not meet optimal needs unless deliberate efforts are made. One of the most important distinctions to make is that electrolyte needs do not remain static. In fact, they vary widely depending on the individual's lifestyle, climate, and phase of adaptation. Someone who is fasting, for example, will excrete electrolytes at a faster rate due to decreased food intake, making it essential to supplement during fasting windows. Athletes and highly active individuals sweat heavily, losing not only water, but high volumes of sodium and potassium, and often need to increase their intake by several grams to maintain performance. Similarly, individuals living in hot or humid climates experience accelerated electrolyte loss through perspiration and will require higher baseline levels than those in cooler environments. Even within the same person, demands can change depending on stress levels, hydration, and the hormonal state.
Friends, this is really crucial stuff, and you would not find this info anywhere else. Just watch with a little more attention here onwards.
During the first 2 to 4 weeks of carnivore adaptation, the body's electrolyte handling is in flux. Sodium loss peaks as insulin remains low and renal sodium excretion remains high. Many people experience the most symptoms during this window, not because they are doing the diet incorrectly, but because they are unaware of how their body's mineral needs have shifted. Over time, the kidneys and aldosterone levels adjust, allowing for more efficient retention of electrolytes. However, according to Dr. Robert Kiltz, this new baseline never fully returns to what it was on a high-carbohydrate diet. The shift is permanent, and the body's demand for minerals remains consistently elevated long after the initial transition. Scientific literature consistently supports the importance of electrolyte support during low-carb adaptation. Finney's foundational studies showed that physical performance in athletes on ketogenic diets suffered dramatically in the absence of sodium and potassium, but improved substantially when these minerals were restored. A 2022 review published in the Journal of Clinical Medicine reinforced the conclusion that mineral intake must be consciously increased on low-carb dietary regimens to prevent adverse symptoms and to maintain optimal function. This body of evidence aligns with what clinicians have observed for years: that most adaptation symptoms are neither dangerous nor inevitable, but are instead preventable consequences of unaddressed electrolyte loss. Despite this, several persistent misconceptions continue to mislead newcomers. Many people still believe that salt is harmful and should be minimized, a belief rooted in studies conducted on carbohydrate-based populations with elevated insulin and sodium retention. In the context of a low-insulin, fat-adapted state, the physiology is entirely different. Sodium is lost, not retained, and must be deliberately replenished. Another common myth is that meat alone provides sufficient electrolytes. While animal foods contain sodium, potassium, magnesium, and calcium in varying amounts, they are often insufficient in isolation, particularly during adaptation, fasting, or heavy training. This is why even long-term carnivores often include supplemental salt, mineral water, bone broth, or other mineral-rich strategies in their routine. And finally, the notion that electrolytes are only needed during the early weeks is simply false. Even after full adaptation, physical exertion, heat exposure, and periods of stress can increase mineral demands, making ongoing electrolyte awareness a lifelong component of the diet. Understanding and applying this knowledge changes everything. Those who were struggling to get through the first month on carnivore often report a complete reversal of symptoms: better energy, fewer cravings, clearer thinking, and restful sleep, once they begin supporting sodium, potassium, and magnesium in line with their new physiology. What felt like a difficult adaptation phase becomes a smooth transition. What once seemed like diet failure becomes diet success. With this second pillar firmly in place, our body not only adapts, rather it thrives on the carnivore diet.
And now, friends, moving to the most crucial piece in this whole puzzle of our carnivore journey. Pillar number 3, meal frequency optimization, unlocking the true metabolic efficiency.
Friends, while the fat-to-protein ratio fuels the metabolic engine and electrolyte balance keeps it running smoothly, the third pillar, meal timing and frequency, acts as the rhythm that governs the system's efficiency. It's not just about what you eat, but also when and how often you eat that profoundly influences metabolic flexibility, hormone balance, autophagy, and ultimately, long-term health outcomes. The carnivore diet, by its very nature, often nudges individuals toward fewer meals. High-satiety foods like fatty red meat and eggs leave people deeply satisfied, frequently eliminating the desire for constant snacking or multiple daily feedings. This natural drift toward less frequent eating sets the stage for one of the most powerful metabolic interventions available: intermittent fasting. On a standard high-carbohydrate diet, individuals often rely on 3 main meals a day with snacks in between, leading to near-constant insulin stimulation. This metabolic pattern prevents fat burning, promotes insulin resistance, and suppresses key cellular repair mechanisms. In contrast, the carnivore approach, centered on zero carbohydrate intake and stable blood sugar, allows for longer fasting windows between meals without energy crashes or hunger spikes. Many carnivore followers naturally transition into 2 meals a day, 2 MAD, or even 1 meal a day, OMAD, without forcing it. This shift is more than a convenience. It initiates deep hormonal and cellular adaptations with wide-reaching health benefits. One of the most profound changes that occurs during extended fasting periods is the activation of autophagy, a cellular recycling process where the body breaks down and removes damaged cells, proteins, and organelles. This process enhances cellular repair, reduces inflammation, and is believed to delay aging. The importance of autophagy is so significant that Japanese cell biologist Yoshinori Ohsumi was awarded the 2016 Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine for his work uncovering its mechanisms. Studies show that autophagy begins to ramp up around the 12 to 16-hour fasting mark, making daily time-restricted eating a practical way to stimulate cellular rejuvenation without extended fasts. Fasting also triggers a surge in human growth hormone, HGH, especially during longer fasts of 24 to 36 hours. Clinical data has shown that HGH levels can increase 5-fold after 24 hours of fasting and up to 10-fold after 36 hours, supporting fat loss and preserving muscle mass. This is a critical feature for those aiming to lose weight without sacrificing lean body tissue. Unlike calorie restriction, which often results in muscle catabolism, intermittent fasting, paired with high-protein carnivore meals, allows the body to burn fat while retaining muscle, thanks in part to this hormonal shift. Additionally, fasting improves insulin sensitivity, allowing glucose to be used more efficiently when reintroduced, even in trace amounts from gluconeogenesis. These effects are not merely theoretical. In a 2022 randomized crossover trial, healthy adults who followed an OMAD routine, eating one large meal in the evening, experienced nearly 3 times more fat loss over 2 weeks compared to those eating 3 meals per day. Participants on OMAD also showed higher rates of fat oxidation, improved metabolic markers, and no loss in aerobic capacity, demonstrating that performance was preserved despite less frequent eating. These findings reinforce what the carnivore community has been observing for years. Fasting and carnivore are synergistic tools that work together to optimize body composition, energy, and long-term health.
So friends, what does the Harvard study tell us about meal frequency optimization on the carnivore diet? Let's find out.
Well, the Harvard-affiliated Carnivore Survey, one of the most comprehensive observational studies of its kind, adds real-world weight to these findings. Among more than 2,000 individuals who had followed a carnivore diet for at least 6 months, a significant proportion reported practicing intermittent fasting, either OMAD or 2 meals a day, with notable health improvements. Participants who combined time-restricted eating with a high-fat carnivore approach reported higher satisfaction, improved insulin markers, and greater weight loss success. More importantly, those who practiced fasting in conjunction with carnivore experienced lower rates of adaptation symptoms, likely due to better hormonal regulation and improved metabolic flexibility. This points to the powerful synergy between meal timing and macronutrient optimization. However, meal frequency is not a one-size-fits-all solution. While OMAD works exceptionally well for some, others, particularly women or those with high energy demands, may thrive on a 2 or 3 meal schedule. Women, for instance, are more hormonally sensitive to long fasting windows, especially if total caloric intake falls too low over time. For these individuals, 2 meals a day with a 16 to 8 time-restricted window often provides the ideal balance. Enough time in a fasted state to trigger autophagy and hormonal benefits, while still allowing ample opportunity to consume necessary calories and micronutrients. Many women report more stable cycles, better mood, and improved energy on this gentler form of intermittent fasting. For athletes or those recovering from illness or stress, even 3 carnivore meals per day can work, particularly when the focus is on rebuilding tissue and stabilizing the nervous system. In these cases, the quality and satiety of carnivore meals naturally prevent overeating, even when the eating window is extended. Fasting also exerts powerful effects on testosterone, leptin, ghrelin, and cortisol, hormones intimately involved in energy regulation, hunger, and reproduction. In men, intermittent fasting can lead to higher testosterone levels, improved luteinizing hormone signaling, and more favorable muscle-to-fat ratios. In women, Insulin sensitivity improves with moderate fasting, which helps normalize estrogen and progesterone dynamics. Many report that premenstrual symptoms ease, cycles become more regular, and mood swings diminish. Carnivore, by already stabilizing blood sugar and reducing inflammatory triggers, creates the perfect metabolic landscape to make these hormonal benefits even more pronounced. Another major advantage of reduced meal frequency is the rest it gives the gastrointestinal system. Unlike high-fiber or plant-heavy diets, which constantly stimulate the gut, carnivore meals are dense, low residue, and highly absorbable. Fasting between these meals allows the migrating motor complex to fully sweep the digestive tract, reducing bloating, improving movement regularity, and often resolving IBS-like symptoms. Many carnivore followers with prior digestive disorders report that once they stopped grazing and adopted a structured 2 meals a day or OMAD routine, their digestion became calm, regular, and effortless. There's even preliminary evidence that extended fasting may help reduce autoimmune triggers in the gut and promote mucosal healing. Finally, it is important to distinguish between forced restriction and natural rhythm. Most carnivore eaters who shift to OMAD or 2 meals a day do not do so because they are following a rulebook. They simply aren't hungry. This is due to the powerful satiety effect of animal fats and proteins, which stabilize leptin and ghrelin, the hormones responsible for satiety and hunger cues. Once those signals are functioning correctly, people eat when hungry, stop when full, and rarely think about food between meals. Cravings vanish, energy stabilizes, and food becomes fuel, not obsession. This is perhaps one of the most liberating aspects of combining carnivore with intermittent fasting. The sense of metabolic peace and freedom that replaces the food fixation typical in modern life. In simple words, Pillar 3, meal frequency and fasting optimization, is where the real metabolic magic happens. It reinforces the gains made through the right fat-to-protein ratio and proper electrolyte management by harnessing the body's natural cycles of feeding and repair. Whether through daily time-restricted eating, OMAD for efficiency, or occasional 24-hour fasts to reset inflammation, this pillar transforms carnivore from a simple elimination diet into a powerful therapeutic intervention. For those dealing with insulin resistance, autoimmune issues, stubborn weight, or fatigue, adjusting the meal timing would very well be the final step that unlocks our desired results and outcomes.
So friends, with the 3 core pillars in place, we're not just following a simple carnivore diet. Rather, we're engaging in a systematic realignment of our whole metabolic health, built on true evolutionary logic and validated by robust modern science.
And friends, this is not all. We'll explore in part 2 of this video how this triad of dietary principles has reversed thousands of chronic conditions, which were once thought to be totally impossible to heal. Meanwhile, let us know. How has been your experience on the diet you are following these days? What ratios and configurations you have found to be most effective for you? What benefits have you witnessed so far? Do share in the comments. Press the like button if you found this video helpful and informative, and share it with your friends and family as well. Subscribe now to our channel Carnivore Squad, helping us spread this healing message further. And do you know the 3 mind-blowing things about the first ever carnivore food pyramid? Click the video showing up the screen to find that out. See you there.